Welcome into Of His Own Word, part number 4, Autism and New Hampshire Autism Protection Bill. The backstory, and told by Ian Hound and Seana Hallberg. Okay, said that, and can't believe that's in part number 4 already, but my name's Ian Hound. I was diagnosed with high-functioning autism in 2011, and I'm now here for the 4th time, but this time we're going to be going story time rather than technical, and telling the backstory of House Bill 1316, currently in front of the New Hampshire House of Representatives. On today's program, I'm joined by Seana Hallberg, and Seana, just curious what you're interested in the matter, and
sure.
A little on your background.
Sure. So I will introduce myself. My name is Seana Hallberg. I live in the seacoast of New Hampshire. I'm primarily here as a parent. I'm a mom of 3 young adults and teens. I have a 20-year-old, 18-year-old, and 15-year-old. My passion is disability advocacy. I do neuro-affirming mental health care. I primarily serve autistic and ADHD and other neurodivergent individuals through a private practice. And I am here as a citizen, but I sit on the policy committee of the New Hampshire Council for Developmental Disabilities. I'm very active in the Seacoast chapter of ABLE, which is a disability justice organization. And I'm now on the school board in Dover, New Hampshire as well.
Oh, right on.
So, there was the whole Run for Something campaign. So I decided that I would throw my hat in the ring for school board. So that is a new role for me. 1316 came to be after I heard statements from RFK Jr.'s autism registry through the federal government, and right away, it took my breath away thinking about a national registry for autistic individuals. So I reached out to actually a friend of mine who's also a disability advocate who is moving out of state, but they're very active in the community, and they have written some LSRs. And so I said, I want to get my feet wet in starting to work on some legislation. I was lucky enough that I got to do the leadership program through the Institute on Disability at UNH, and I got to work at that time on universal changing stations. So there was a bill to put universal changing stations into new builds that were over 1,500 individuals. They serve over 1,500 individuals a day. And so these are fully accessible restrooms. And so I worked on, we worked on in leadership a project around that, and I learned about how bills go through, or LSRs go through and become bills, I should say. So I reached out to another advocate, and she said, well, you're really gonna need to find somebody to sponsor the bill, which, I reached out to, actually to Alice Wade and Heath Howard both.
Heath Howard, State Representative Howard, is a good friend of mine, by the way, and he was actually with us for part number 3, which we recorded early in February, as it turns out.
Yes. So I, at that point, reached out and had a conversation with both Alice Wade and Heath Howard, and both were very interested in sponsoring the bill. And I started doing some research on Illinois' bill. It was an executive order that J.B. Pritzker put forward after he heard the statements by RFK. And so in order to work on the bill, I used that language from that legislation that was passed in Illinois.
And actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. The reason I took an interest in the subject similarly is after Secretary Kennedy made his announcement about an autism registry back in the spring of last year. My take on it was absolute disgust and alarm over the fact that he was even proposing it, number one. Number two, as I've had the privilege of featuring in the first couple of segments of the program, people with autism are actually quite capable and quite accomplished. And I would point to State Representative Foss in Manchester, similarly State Representative Howard of the Barrington area.
Yes.
And perfect examples of this. It was actually talking with State Representative Howard at an event at the State House in Concord last May. He was the one to encourage me to speak up about it. He was the one who said that I had a unique opportunity, a unique platform here to present the counter argument to what the risk was behind an autism registry.
Yes.
What the harm could potentially be when they're talking about, on one hand, they're talking about non-consensually collecting our medical data to study it so they can, quote unquote, find a cure for autism, which that's problematic in itself.
Right.
Because if you go far enough down that road, you're bordering on eugenics.
Right.
And that's not what we want.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing your lived experience, but nobody should have to disclose their medical data ever unless they want to.
Not what exactly.
And so that to me is a basic human right. And when the federal government is taking that away from people, that is a problem. And I want to speak to something you said.
Sure.
So I find that when we talk about functioning labels and we say, well, I'm high functioning, the other side of that we would say the opposite. And I won't even say those words because I don't use functioning labels. I say support levels.
And I'm a little bit old school.
No, it's fine. But I think this is a really important. I think this is a really important conversation because what it does then is separates autistic individuals. And the case for that, historically, when we look back at history, that is what Hans Asperger did, is he separated people based on capitalism and what they could contribute to the capitalist system. So when we talk about autistics and we separate them from their ability to create capital, I choose no longer to do that because I think autistics all have something in common, and that is their lived humanity.
Okay.
And so what I want to say is that I do not care what somebody's support levels are. They need to have the basic human right that their information be protected under our constitutional amendment to have their private data stay that. And if they choose to participate in a study like Lily Foss had talked about during the hearing, that is something that they get consent for.
And actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. That's one of the areas of concern that I addressed in two different speeches at the New Hampshire State House last summer and fall. Was my concern about not just the idea of a registry itself, but the fact that they had put it forward with no guardrails, no safety net, no clear definition of what they were actually going to do.
And people
once they collected the information.
Keep talking about HIPAA. Well, there's HIPAA. Correct, there is HIPAA. But when the federal government, the head of Department of Health and Human Services says we are going to make a registry and they are not following right now the laws unless a court holds them accountable, to me, that becomes very problematic because our guardrails are not effective right now.
Oh, definitely.
And that is where I believe this legislation steps in as a protection within our state. And I'm sorry, if Illinois found it was problematic and passed an executive order that became law, we need to, as New Hampshire, as residents of New Hampshire, question why in New Hampshire we're being told that this bill is not needed.
And we can get into that a little bit further along.
Right.
Certainly. And I was going to bring that point up also, that if Illinois, for example, and Governor Pritzker saw alarm bells mere weeks after the proposal,
100%.
Mere days after he had been in the state,
Yep.
at an event in Manchester, of which I had an opportunity to go to and hear him speak.
I was there as well. Were you there that night?
In Manchester, yeah.
I was there too. I didn't see you.
Oh, big room,
Yeah.
800 and something
Yeah, it was a lot
us,
of people.
it happened. And actually, it was two of his quotes from the end of his speech that night. I will confess I have used
Yeah.
to close out my own speech, because I felt at the time, and still do,
Yeah.
they appropriately encapsulate what we need to do at this point in time.
Yeah. And I want to, when I think back about the kind of like the coming to me of HB 13 before I knew that JB Pritzker had done that work, I wanted to say that I read a Mother Jones article. And I wish I knew, it was sometime last spring, as you said, and Mother Jones put an article out about the registry and work camps at the same time, and they were in the same article. And so that to me was really problematic. And they talked about health camps and taking away technology and having movement. And so
yeah, I think I read something similar to that, and I believe he termed it wellness camp.
exactly, I think it's similar. Yes, it might be the same thing.
And I encourage the audience to look this up on their own if they wish. And I believe it was from back in February of last year, or possibly March in that time frame.
And I want to go back to
Sure.
the language around autistic individuals and identity first versus, disability first, and there's so many differences in the community. So I never want to speak over an autistic individual by any means, but I think the language is constantly evolving. And what scares me is that this path that we're on, which I think is eugenics adjacent, I do think it's adjacent. And
Taken far enough, very potentially, yeah.
right. And so what I found is that I just want to be super thoughtful and not alienating, because I think what this administration federally is doing is alienating the disability community. And what has happened is a lot of individuals who have higher support needs, a lot of families and caregivers of individuals who have the highest of support needs want help. They want to have answers. And so what I am thoughtful about is I don't ever want to speak over anybody, but I think when we start talking about, it's a very slippery slope. And I kind of just want to highlight that it's like, I think that this administration has kind of, I know in circles, just pitted the community kind of against each other in some ways, because some people are saying, no, we don't want to be erased, we don't want to be cured, we don't want to be fixed. And then some caregivers of higher support needs individuals are saying, but we need help, we need support.
And I feel like that's true in a lot of the cases, and to a lesser extent myself and some of our audience, and will recognize, and certainly the folks here at Hudson Community TV. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of addressing my own school board here in Hudson in regard to the contract for the paraprofessionals, which is coming up here in a couple of weeks, and pointing out that it was those individuals that helped me get through public schools right here in Hudson, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So it's very real.
Right. And what I would say is that we are more powerful united than we are divided. And at
for
the
sure.
end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want our rights to be protected, and we want support. And we, by support, we need to have funding and we need to have access to the things that we need.
Two things that they don't want anything to do with, and there's a whole discussion that has been brought to my attention by a family member of mine in the last couple of weeks, that the Office of Medicaid Services has been going around to different states and effectively bullying them into cutting funding to families that are utilizing that for autism support, necessary drugs that help the person basically function day to day.
Right.
And that in itself is quite alarming too, because that gets into a whole other angle that I addressed last summer and fall about my concern of systematic manipulation on the back of the proposed registry. And it's my belief that 1316 can be and was going to be a stepping stone in heading some of that off.
Right. And, I'm not sure, I don't know that people also, everyday citizens, realize the history around what has happened to disabled individuals historically. And I'm not even talking about, I'm talking about even in our country, the surveillance and, the institutionalization. And so when we have words like RFK Jr. put out about a registry, it rings alarm bells, and there is generational trauma that individuals are still living through. I mean, when we think about institutionalization was not that long ago. And many people have relatives that lived through institutionalization. So it's not, we are not that far on the other side of it. So I think people don't recognize even the impact and harm of the words that are being said. And we heard that in the hearing. We heard that when we listened to the hearing and when
And I mean, I'm guilty of raising the historical context of it myself, and I have raised it at least 2 different times on this very program, both in part 2 and 3. But I believe it's entirely relevant and certainly gets into why I support what's being attempted. Because at least on the state level, it's an attempt to slow that down and in an attempt to avoid it, if possible.
So when I testified in the hearing, I shared some of my personal story, which I need to be thoughtful of because it's also my loved one's story, not necessarily mine. Adjacently, it's mine. But I love autistic individuals. I'm raising some autistic individuals. I am in community with many autistic individuals. They are my coworkers. They are my friends. They are fellow advocates. And that's not just in the disability community. I am talking, these are my ride or die friends that I have had for years. I want to say that when I heard a certain representative say that they believe that there should be a cure, that is eugenics. And that
without question,
And I want to say that autistic individuals are here. They are here in a much larger capacity than we realize because there are very highly masked, hidden lower support needs individuals. They are amongst us all day. They are our coworkers, they are our neighbors, they are our cousins. They are now it's becoming way more understood. Our evaluations and assessments are becoming way more accurate to depict. They are our fellow community members, and I do not know how I can express in a more poignant way that their autistic individuals are some of the most incredible human beings, and whenever we have language around them not being part of our community, that should raise alarm bells for everybody. It's 2026. Right now, I think it might be 1 in 32, 36 still. I think the stats might be 1 in 36 still. I don't know. I haven't looked.
You could be right about that.
But I'm telling you, as a late diagnosed neurodivergent individual myself, I lived my whole life not knowing I was neurodivergent. And I know a handful of these people, and I just need people to know that it is extremely problematic when we are having legislators speak about their constituents this way, their community members this way, people that might be sitting next to them but have not disclosed this way.
And I find it interesting that you bring that up, because while I was talking with Representative Foss back in early January, as a matter of fact, she also admitted to not having known until fairly late in the game either. I didn't know that's what it was until 2011. And yes, I was put through the whole gauntlet as the science changed of the various titles too.
Yeah.
And I feel like while knowledge and power at the same time, there's an element of once you know, then it starts to piss you off when you hear things like Representative Mainzer this very week, and we're sitting here on Friday, in their session on Wednesday, and I'll get into it in more depth a little bit later, said that, we don't need an autism privacy bill. We don't need the autism data protection bill, because all those protections are already established in federal law.
Yeah.
Americans with Disabilities Act, and I'm going to misquote some of them here, so I apologize on that, but it's already established in federal law. I hear something like that, and it angers me to my very core, because what she doesn't understand was this discussion, this debate, this fight was never just about the data. It's about the bigger picture. This fight is about having our friends, family, neighbors, the people we are around in the community who happen to be neurodivergent, happen to be autistic. It's about keeping them off of a registry.
100%.
Nazi Germany used a registry for people they didn't like to disastrous ends. If I have anything to say about it and my mere existence pisses off the government, then I apologize. But I am for damn sure not going to be quiet about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think too, I want to bring up that during the hearing, it's so crucial that we be really thoughtful about the language we're using and the dehumanization of a whole demographic of people, that when you are in a position of power and you are making life and death decisions, literally life and death decisions, when it comes to the legislation you're passing, we have got to, as a community, ask more from our legislators. We have got to step back and say, we will not tolerate that and the misinformation. There was a lot of talk during the hearing, which I struggled to really understand, also questioning immunizations. And I don't know if that's because there was immunizations bills before, or if that was a question asking the representative their thoughts on immunizations. And I just want to be so thoughtful that, again, I wouldn't be questioning this had the head of Health and Human Services not be pushing an agenda where now we're questioning whether vaccines are safe when that has been disproven and disproven again.
And I want to take a moment and shed some light on that commentary, because right after the committee had a public hearing on House Bill 1316 a couple weeks ago, I spoke with a mutual friend of ours, State Representative Heath Howard, who was on our last program. And he and I got talking about that very point. And it was our understanding that there had been a number of anti-vaccine bills also having been heard on the same day. And some of the discussion around that had bled into conversation about the Autism Data Protection Bill, as well as there is a very absolutely ugly and completely untrue misrepresentation that vaccines cause autism, which I have addressed on this very program a number of times, that they, number one, they do not, and number two, in cases where they did play a role in the study or did come up as a factor in the study, the end result, the effect on the result was statistically insignificant in the overall conclusion of that study.
Yeah. So that was confusing to me. It was a bit alarming that came up in a bill where we're asking for data privacy protections and immunizations came up. That was perplexing to me.
Oh, for sure. You and me both.
I was like, what? And then I was really taken aback and had a very hard time actually getting through my testimony because mere seconds before I spoke, that representative said that they asked if they could answer the question they posed as should autism be cured, and then asked the chair if they could answer, and said that they would have it, that it would be cured. And so I was so taken aback as I went up to testify that I had a hard time getting through it. And I just want to share that I would choose my loved ones over and over and over again, just as they are. And that I think that if you're not in community or connected to an autistic individual, you are missing out.
Oh, definitely.
And so, yeah, the hearing was really painful. It was really painful. I'm gonna be totally honest, I cried the entire way home.
And your reaction to it was sadness, and mine was disgust and anger, quite frankly.
They're speaking to your humanity.
If I might be so candid.
Yeah.
It angers me that members of our New Hampshire legislature have bought into the lies, the misrepresentation, the misinformation, the scapegoating that has been put out by our federal government on the subject, to such a degree that they believe that people like myself, people like Representative Foss, people like Representative Howard, members of Seana's own family, should not be because of who we are. Excuse me, that gets back to my point about a little bit earlier, that if you have a problem with me because I exist, fine. I don't care at this point, but I am not going to shut up either.
Exactly.
That's why I'm doing this. That's why I spoke out last summer and fall at the New Hampshire State House. That's why this whole program started, was to address the arrogant and ignorant commentary around autism.
Yeah.
It is my belief that not only should we be educating individuals about it like we are right now, we should be working to include those individuals.
Yes.
Heck, some of my best friends from high school are like me, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It blows my mind at how, quite frankly, ill-informed some people are. And that's what really set me off when I hear a Republican state representative on the very committee hearing House Bill 1316 this week, going on and on about, oh, we shouldn't have to need autism data protection, data privacy. Excuse me. One, you're insulting the entire community that I am within, including me. Two, yes, those are already established in federal law. However, we are at a point in our country right now where the current administration has blatantly chose to ignore the Constitution. They have blatantly chosen to ignore the rule of law. The current data protection and data privacy provisions will be ignored if it suits them.
Yeah.
We have already seen it, number one. Talking about a registry is a perfect example of it. They weren't just going to study autism to cure it. Like Seana and I have said, one, that's eugenics. Two, they are trying to blame us for something that we didn't seek out by choice. It's who we are. And three, and most alarmingly, and I know it gets off what the state's doing at the moment, and three, and it draws in a concern that I have in federal immigration wanting to have detention centers, warehouses, including here in Merrimack, including in nearby Merrimack, New Hampshire. That screams to me that they are going to expand their efforts to scapegoat minority groups, be it autistic, transgender, women. Where does it stop?
Right. Right. And we don't know what the plan is, but we have got to use our voices and leverage any privilege we have.
Oh, for sure.
To get involved, to look at who your legislators are, look at their records, get your voice out there, because the time is right now to get involved.
Oh,
if
for
there
sure.
was ever a time that you have felt the desire to raise your voice, the time is now.
And I mean, just what we've gone over so far in the program doesn't even get into the fact that, I want to say it's Aaliyah Rahman, a U.S. citizen living in Minneapolis, on the autism spectrum, in January of this year, was going to a routine follow-up appointment at a clinic up the street from an ICE operation. Because she didn't move fast enough, they assaulted her and arrested her because she was in the wrong place and simply got in their way.
Yeah.
That concerns me.
Yeah.
That concerns me that that's the path we're going down if this is not stopped.
And I think people also need to understand the vulnerabilities of individuals that are autistic, the vulnerabilities for when law enforcement that is not trained adequately interacts with autistic individuals. Their nervous systems are much more sensitive and can get dysregulated much more easily. And these individuals do not have training on how to communicate effectively and appropriately.
Definitely.
And we saw this case. She was cut with a knife. Her seatbelt was cut with a knife. She was removed from her car and could not access her language. She did an amazing job saying, I'm a disabled individual with a traumatic brain injury. Many highly verbal autistic individuals that I work with and that I'm in community with, under those same circumstances, would not be able to access their language because of the fear and because of the sensory processing differences. So that in and of itself is a huge, huge concern, especially when we have these 287G agreements with our state police. I think there's now maybe 14 or 15 in the state of New Hampshire.
14 in last check, yeah.
So our police are working with these law enforcement individuals, ICE, I think it's, is it not only ICE, it's Customs and Border Patrol, so CBP, that, you know.
And I want to say it's Homeland Security Investigations is the other big one, but don't quote me on
and
that.
so I think, you know, what we need to think about is the vulnerability of our community members as well, as this is coming to our state, that it is very important that we understand and really as citizens and community members protect our neighbors. I think it's very important. You do not know when somebody is an autistic individual. It is very hidden for many people, not everybody, but for most people you would never know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so
and if they're like myself, they can seem perfectly normal on the surface, perfectly ordinary.
And we would never know that the woman in Minneapolis had that experience had she not come forward and once again had to disclose her disability. She should never have had to do that. And now the world is looking at her, and she was so immensely brave in sharing her story. But what I think is that we have got to, as community members, do our job and our role in protecting each other right now.
Even more so now, yeah.
Yeah.
And now that we've, partially gotten off topic, but not necessarily so, and discussed some of the reasons why we want people to understand why it's important, I would be remiss not to acknowledge the fact that the State House of Representatives has in fact taken up House Bill 1316 in committee over the past couple weeks, also had an executive session, and after talking with Seana a little bit coming into the day's program, we've got more than a few things to say about what's gone on recently. So kindly excuse me if I get a little animated in the next couple of minutes here.
That's fine.
First, to give a little bit of background for the audience, on Wednesday afternoon, February the 18th, as we record this, the New Hampshire House Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee held an executive session where they took up, by my count, it was 5, maybe 6 different bills, including House Bill 1316 about autism data privacy. And let's see, during the committee session, yada, yada, yada. As times and technology and processes change, we need to be updating the data privacy bills, or laws, excuse me, just from a fundamental standpoint. Case in point, look at what happened with Covenant Health and their subsidiary, St. Joseph's Hospital in nearby Nashua, in having a massive data breach late last year. But it goes beyond that. There's an additional layer to this, that House Bill 1316 was also an attempt to address some of the continued misrepresentation, misinformation being spread about autism. And fundamental protection for the autistic community are particularly key now more than ever. Because as I point out, look at what happened in Minneapolis that we just mentioned. We cannot be having that going on here. Historically speaking, this administration is directly channeling Nazi Germany and scapegoating different groups, including the autistic community, with misrepresentation, misinformation. And, oh, by the way, it came out mid-January, a study published in the journal The Lancet of European scientists and professionals that took up the matter of does Tylenol cause autism. They reaffirmed what the original study said, that there is no direct connection there. That yes, caution should be used in those cases, but it directly counters what our very own administration was putting out last fall about there being a direct link. There still is not.
Yeah, and they came back and said that there is no link, right? After putting all that information out and terrifying pregnant women, mothers of autistic individuals, and women in general, who that is the way that they manage their pain. That is the only option that women have to safely manage pain that is over the counter, right? And so it is really imperative also, I would say, to really do your own digging on information that's coming out.
Oh, definitely.
Do your own research, right? Because right now we are giving information and receiving information that may not always be accurate. And so I think in a time when it is so easy to get information, it's also really hard to weed through what is actually accurate information.
During the executive session about House Bill 1316 on Wednesday afternoon, committee member State Representative Mazer motioned the bill should be inexpedient to legislate. In layman's terms, here in New Hampshire, that means effectively kill it. Her insistence was that no additional data protections are needed, that it's already written into existing federal law. The current administration doesn't care about those laws. They will go around above and through them given an opportunity to. And that no singular group should be singled out within the discussion. The problem is they're already singling us out in the first place. And then she's throwing a fit because we're trying to protect our families, our friends, our neighbors, people within our community. Madam Representative, refusing to change with the times is incredibly short-sighted. Our medical data is already at risk because of change in technology and practices. Additionally, what you do not understand in the discussion of House Bill 1316, it isn't about the existing data protection laws nationally. The main reason for House Bill 1316 is to counter the type of data collection that was included in the National Autism Registry proposed by USDHHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. last spring. The original Autism Registry was requiring non-consensual data collection for a registry to study and cure autism. Excuse me, that sounds incredibly like eugenics. The original Autism Registry proposal was made extremely underdefined, and there was no guarantee to prevent misuse. Oh, and I go on. Both historical context, Germany in the late 1930s and early 40s, and the action/comment of RFK Jr. and allies are a major red flag. Also, it is seriously alarming just last month to see that U.S. citizen and Minneapolis resident Alaya Rahman was assaulted and arrested by U.S. government law enforcement officers for being in the wrong place, and she got in their way.
You made an eloquent statement there. Yeah. And what I would go on to say is that anybody in the community listening right now that is either autistic themselves or in community with autistics, sharing a life with an autistic individual, having autistic children, there is no need to change who you are. Mm-hmm. And I am so sorry that that is what you are hearing, and that, you know, these conversations are so important.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And I think the more we start to have them and keep having them, the better. I think that HB 1316 is a really important bill, and I think is the right step forward in protecting autistic individuals and residents of New Hampshire.
Oh, and actually, you take my next point right out of my, you took the word right out of my mouth on the next point, because that's what I go on to say too, that I believe that it certainly isn't going to fix all of it overnight. No. Certainly not, but it's certainly a good step toward protecting our fellow autistic residents. By recommending ITL, you are opening New Hampshire residents with autism to the whims of President Trump and his allies. You are also potentially opening us up to being statistical footnotes if history continues to repeat itself. And my question, and this came up during the exec session, is to Representative Lamont Tang, and I apologize if I mispronounced it.
Yeah.
Her proposal was to have a work session in regard to House Bill 1316 about autism data privacy, also about House Bill 1317, which was a broader medical data privacy bill.
Yep.
Heard during the same exec session a little bit further on.
Yep.
What did she see in terms of potential that could be combined?
Yes.
Is that something that could be a template overall that we could start from here?
Definitely. And 1317.
Go ahead.
1317 was something that I brought forward with Heath Howard as well, because the disability community is a vast and large community of incredible individuals with all different needs and strengths. And so I felt it imperative to also not just support and protect that community, but the larger mental health and disability community.
Oh, for sure.
And so I think that Representative Lamontagne it was a really good thought, right? That maybe we don't have all of the information we need. Can we bring this forward and do a work study and maybe look at combining these bills? And
her commentary, and my take on her commentary, sounded like she was trying to find, dare I say it, a suitable middle ground
100%.
of combining both efforts, which if we can't have all of one or all of the other, that's certainly what I'd like to see come out of it. And perhaps a hybrid of the two if we can't have one or the other alone. It's my belief that recommending ITL is a harmful disservice to New Hampshire's autism community.
I want to thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable. I just think it's so important, and I am disappointed, but I don't think the work here is done by any means.
And that's, as you mentioned that's why I wanted to make a quick aside here. Right after I saw the recommendation of the Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee on Wednesday afternoon, I reached out to a good mutual friend of ours, Louis Espito, who was on this very program in part number 2 with me, the executive director at ABLE New Hampshire, and I posed to him the following line of question. What is our next move here? Mm-hmm. What is the next step? Mm-hmm. How do we salvage at least something out of it? Mm-hmm. How do we make something of the effort, even though the committee wants to kill the bill and shut it down?
Right. And I think that's
What's the path forward
I think
here?
that's where we go next, right? Is we did not prevail right now, right?
I'd like to think of it as a significant setback, yes.
But,
and Louis pointed out to me, we're not nearly done.
Yeah. And I think
this is not over yet.
Right. And I think that's where we kind of gather up all of the information we need on how best to move forward strategically, and kind of get our key players in the mix and in the conversation about what are the next steps that we take.
And then I mean, Seana already kind of said it already. In regard to the hearing itself, I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts here that I agree with what Representative Foss had to say about the bill in terms of the hearing, that she's exactly right, that it was about not just the data privacy angle of it, but fundamental protecting right to the New Hampshire autistic community.
Yeah. And I want to bring out go ahead.
Hold that thought for just a moment, because this is what bothered me about the hearing itself, was the honorable gentleman on the committee who was trying to insist that there is a link between vaccines and autism. We touched on this a little bit earlier too. There is still no link.
Yeah.
As I said already multiple times, and pardon me for sounding like a broken record, there's no link. Anytime it came up in these studies, it was statistically insignificant.
I just wanted to bring up when I was going to say earlier that we have Gen Court, which we use to sign in on bills, and I did not look at, as it closed out on February 4th, I did not look at close to midnight. But when I looked at the opposition versus the support, I want to bring to people that 10 to 1 people supported this bill. And so last I looked, there was nearly high 400s in support, and then there was around maybe 30 to 40 in opposition. And some of those in opposition actually made a mistake because they misread the bill and they wrote testimony in support but hit opposition. And so what I want to say to people is also, the constituents are speaking, but they're not being heard. And so that is a huge issue that could have a whole other segment.
And that raises a question in my mind too, that if we're in the neighborhood of, and I looked this up myself, if we're in the neighborhood of 450 in favor, and like you said yourself, 40 to 50 in
not even
in
that,
opposition,
yeah. The last I looked,
if even that.
Right, and I don't have the final numbers. I don't have the final numbers. We could probably figure it out.
The people of New Hampshire spoke very loudly,
and there was
very
a lot of testimony
in favor. Yes. And by recommending ITL, like we talked about here just a moment ago, the committee basically thumped their nose at us and said, "Too bad."
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I have a problem with this. And that's why I'm not ready to give up, though. because we had 400 to almost 500 people saying that this is a good idea, this is a common sense idea that we should be looking into.
Yeah.
And I'll make an additional note about the hearing that Kristen Evans of Pelham, who is Able New Hampshire Policy Director and with me on part number 3, presented an excellent discussion of the current environment and basically answering the question of what the harm is, what's at stake without this. And actually, Seana, I gave you a bit of a shout out here.
Thank you.
Acknowledging the fact that, like me, it takes a lot to look within yourself and share your story when we are at such a serious and dangerous turning point in this country. And I'd like to paraphrase a quote that I heard Governor Walz make in regard to Minneapolis. This is not a Democrat issue. This is not a Republican issue. It's an issue of our humanity. It is an issue around the very identity of our country right now. And I don't care if people on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the fence, call me names over it, disagree with me on everything else. We should not be trying to copy Nazi Germany. We should not be aspiring to mimic them in any way. A main reason for this program is not just about the educational value and the esteemed guests that I've had on so far. It's also about how can we be inclusive of people who are not like us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and the rest of the statement, the rest of both statements I've put up on the Of His Own Words page on Facebook. Quick additional note, again, see the Facebook page for the full details, House Bill 1337, which we referenced in part number 2 regarding repealing the New Hampshire Autism Council is being taken up by committee. Of His Own Words Facebook page has the full details, link at the lower right. Oh, somehow okay, how did that happen? Apologies, I thought I cleaned this up more than I did.
It's okay.
Oh, I did duplicate slides several times, that's probably the problem. Okay. Oh, I'm going backward, that's why. Okay, so, yeah, this happened last time
That's
too,
fine.
folks, don't mind me.
That's fine. I'm not in a hurry.
Technology is only so, only so helpful. There we go. And a quick credits page. We have had, just wanted to take a moment and share some of the Of His Own Words extended family at this point. We've had all manner of individuals on, and myself, Alejandro Urita, a big proponent in the Latino community in regard to immigration, State Representative Foss of District 41 in Manchester, including Wards 2, 4, 5, and 7, Representative Howard, Kristen Evans of Able New Hampshire, Lucia Spirito of Able New Hampshire, and of course I'd be remiss not to give a shout out to the three very hardworking gentlemen who helped make this possible. Mike Johnson, Director of Community Media here in Hudson, Mike Pylon, one of the production coordinators, Matt, another one of the production coordinators. What we've covered so far, autism awareness overview in part number 1 from December of last year, legislative preview from January, a legislative process overview from part number 3 from earlier in the month, and then there's a screenshot of our now growing little corner on the Hudson Community TV website. Oh, by the way, did I mention we're now on Facebook?
Great.
Part of that was driven by the fact that House Bill 1316, the communication around it was fairly, dare I say it, dysfunctional and fairly fast. We had 1 week notice before the public hearing. The challenge that I've run into is we can only turn around one of these segments of its own word so quickly.
Yeah.
Prior to filming part 3, we got word that House Bill 1316 was going to have a public hearing the next Wednesday. We were filming on a Monday. Turnaround time dictated we couldn't get it mentioned in the program. Hence why the Facebook page is now up and running, and that's where you can find the more updated announcements on when the different bills are coming up for, be it public hearing, executive session. House Bill 1337 comes up for a public hearing on Wednesday morning for those keeping track. And then finally we wrap up. Again, feel free to check out our Facebook page of its own words on Facebook. Link is included, or peruse the Hudson Community TV website to check out the collection of fine offerings, both town government related and the school sports games that they cover, as well as our very own program to date so far. Stay tuned for part number 5, which will be coming up in early March, and hope to have more details on that here shortly. And finally, I just wanted to take a moment and say a sincere thanks to everyone that has reached out, be it through the Neurodivergent Alliance of New Hampshire, ABLE New Hampshire, Hudson Town Democratic Committee, or those in the community. At times, coming in front of the camera like this is not easy. This is not an easy thing to be talking about at times. I appreciate the team at Hudson Community TV for how accommodating and supportive they've been all the way through the process. And this show would not be nearly what it is without guests like Seana, Representative Foss and Howard, Louis Espito, or Kristen Evans. The whole point behind this program when I started it was to not just have it be my story, but a story of inclusion, what we can learn from each other. And how can we channel that energy into not only addressing the misrepresentation, the misinformation that is coming at us every day, every week, every month, but looking into not just how can we counter that misinformation, which that's important, mind you. It's also important to be understanding of what each other's backgrounds are, what we each bring to the table, because then we can talk about being more inclusive.
Thank you.
Seana?
No, I don't really have anything else to contribute. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate all the work you've done to amplify the bill. I would lie if I said I wasn't really disappointed. It was something that was really, really important to me.
For sure.
I had a hard week, and this was hard news. But I just want to remind people that I am just going to get back up and dust myself off, and I'm not going to stop talking about ways to better our community and ways to be more inclusive and ways to really show up for one another, regardless of,
for sure.
Regardless of our individual needs. We all have a role to play, and I just appreciate your time.
Very much same here, and certainly I second that, and we round out part number 4 of what was, believe it or not, originally going to be a 2-part program already. And I was talking with some of the HGTV folks today, and we've got enough material to make 6, 7, 8 parts of this already.
Yeah.
Which I've said this to Representative Howard, I've said this to Lewis, and I've said this to others in our little corner of humanity here. If you had told me last fall that we would be talking about part 4, 5, 6 already, 1, I would never have believed it. And 2, what keeps me going is the realization that people appreciate the fact that we're bringing attention to this.
Yeah.
People appreciate the fact that I'm speaking up. And some of the things that I heard after speaking in Concord on the State House Plaza last year was an appreciation for bringing awareness to the fact that it's going on, because there are some people who legitimately didn't know or didn't realize that the stakes are that high. And as I reflect on the news this week that we got out of the Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee, yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm disappointed. Yes, I laid into that representative rather hard about what she had to say on it. But whether it's a data privacy debate or not, it was about the bigger picture too. It's about people's fundamental human rights. It's about their constitutional rights. And finally, yes, I realize the committee effectively wants to kill House Bill 1316. Am I disappointed? Sure. Am I surprised? Unfortunately not. But as a lesson that one of my teachers, dare I say it, mentors in high school taught me, it's not over till it's over. That's why, as I mentioned during today's program, I already reached out to an organizer friend of Seana's and mine and asked him, okay, this week's a step back. This week's a step back for our effort. So what?
Yeah.
How do we channel that? How do we still make something of this?
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, and part 5 will be coming in early March.